Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is logistics knowledge work in the AI age with my friend John Delgado. How's it going, John?
It's going great. Good morning, Joe. How are you?
Doing great. John, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
You bet. I'm John Delgado, CEO, founder of FreightPath, and I'm calling from Sacramento, California.
What does FreightPath do?
FreightPath is a education company and talent resource company for the supply chain industry.
You're doing recruiting and training?
Correct. We source talent globally, and we do custom coursework, and then we've got several programs of off-the-shelf learning, around 137 plus courses that's constantly growing, around 2,200 hours of learning.
And what's that? What are those courses about?
Oh my goodness. We cover air, ocean, import, export, compliance, branch finance, accounting, nuts and bolts type courses like global logistics, geography, risk management, and a whole bunch more.
So are you training people so they can get into the space, or are you training people who are already in the space?
That's a great question. We offer a variety of different learning paths. So for people who have zero experience coming into the industry, we have an apprenticeship program that takes them through 1 year of on-the-job training and gives them a 360-degree view of the business. And outside of that, all our other courses are meant to meet people where they are, whether you've been in the industry 5 years, 15, 20. We're all about upskilling.
Interesting. So who are your customers and what problem are you solving for them?
Our customers are anybody you could imagine that's in the international freight forwarding space, domestic transport, and also on the BCO customer side. And we're solving a variety of issues. Number one, we're solving the lack of talent issue, which is plugging the industry right now. So we're helping find and grow the next generation of talent that's coming into the business. That's one of the key mantras of our company. The other thing we're doing is we're upskilling them. We're presenting to the market something that's never been done before, which is very nuts and bolts training to get people off the ground. So in the past, it's been done basically like passing down tribal knowledge, and it's done in a stressful environment in certain ways that lead to more turnover. So that's one of the biggest problems that we're addressing. We're trying to bring new talent to the industry and lower the turnover numbers.
Yeah, John, there's such an interesting dynamic in our business is that most of the learning is on the job. So you come and if you work at a freight brokerage, they quickly just say, hey, you might have a program that you go through. But there's a lot of people who fall out of it for whatever reason. Maybe it wasn't the right fit. Maybe they didn't enjoy the work they thought they were going to enjoy. And that's a lot easier, not easy, I should say simpler. That's simpler, not easy, than the freight forwarding business, where there's just a lot of moving pieces in that business. And it's all on the job learning. No one really gets that education at school. I've taken tons of classes. Some of the hardest classes I took were in automotive, were geared towards learning a very specific thing for a company. And it wasn't even very valuable outside of the automotive industry. And that kind of training doesn't always happen in this business.
It's very true. And you're talking thousands and thousands of human hours to put together training like this. But it's definitely been needed, and we're already seeing the impact and super excited about the direction it's headed.
Yeah. And we talked for way too long before we hit the record button today. But it's such an interesting topic to me and I think we all know this. We all know how much college costs. So somebody can come out of school and they said, yep, I spent me and my parents scraped and scrounged and spent $100,000 to get me a degree in business. And now I go to work for a company that ships stuff and I have zero knowledge of how that works.
It's interesting. You could be a college graduate and go through a 1-year apprenticeship program. And inside of 5 years, if you were, for example, a sales rep in this industry, you could be making anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 a year, instead of having a 4-year degree, still not knowing what you want to do and working at Starbucks. So we're excited about presenting college graduates and even people really with no degrees a whole new landscape and opportunity.
Yep. And again, today's topic is logistics knowledge work in the AI age. I think we all are beginning to feel it. AI is not sci-fi anymore. It's happening. When I just before we were hit record, we were messing around with the title of this, and I was like, "Hey, does AI have a better idea than this?" Usually, it does. This one I picked, I picked, and I keep thinking every other company I talk to has a new AI tool. And the thing about AI is if it's good on day one, it's going to be great on the second month. And a year or two later, it's going to be unrecognizable how much better it is. All of us strive to continuously improve. AI does.
It really does. It's the benchmark. But it's also going to be influencing the landscape, not just in supply chain, but globally in every discipline with regard to how people learn. Back to what I was telling you this morning, um, AI is going to change the classroom experience. It's going to become much more immersive, one on one. It's going to meet learners where they are based on their learning style. And I think a lot of people fear college. They fear the classroom. There's always this feeling in the pit of their stomach. Are they really going to get what's going to be taught? And I think a lot of that is going to change and be alleviated.
Yep, I agree. So, John, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started FreightPath.
I grew up in North Carolina. I was raised by my grandparents. My grandfather was a career military guy, 32 years in the military as a combat medic. And then, believe it or not, he got into the car industry and went to work for General Motors for another 30 years. So he had two careers his whole life. Super neat guy. I went to Methodist University in North Carolina, and I was a humanities major. And actually, I tell people my first job right out of college was recruiting, but the truth of the matter is I had a job for 4 months working for a company called EV Global Motors. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, you've got to check out this new company. You've got to fly to Los Angeles and meet this guy named Lee Iacocca." And I was like, "Really, Lee Iacocca?" And he was an 80s, 90s icon. I get on a plane and I go to LA and I get ushered into this office, and there is Lee Iacocca. And very kind guy. He walks me around his office, and on the wall hanging, I'll never forget this, was the original patent from Alexander Graham Bell that he had bought at an auction. And he had this bookcase in his office, and it was these little 1-inch binders, and there were hundreds of them. And it was every speech he'd ever given. And one of them said, I think it was White House, 1980 something, 82, 83. And I opened it and started looking through his speech, and in the margins, he had all these notes, and one of them was "make them laugh." I don't know. I just never forget that. Anyway, his electric vehicles did not take off. They weren't selling that great, but the idea and concept was pretty sound. So I actually answered an ad to go work at a company called MRI, Management Recruiters International.
Oh, they're big.
Yep. They had 2,200 offices. I was their rookie of the year. I was blessed enough to find a passion early on. And immediately I niched and branded myself into the freight forwarding world. And I can tell you another short story. I started recruiting for Kuehne+Nagel and some other companies. And I was dealing with a company called Panalpina, Swiss company.
Yeah,
and
big.
They had a CEO change. And they were having this huge managers meeting down in Miami. So I flew down there to meet the new CEO. And I had been invited by the head of HR, who I didn't know this, but after I had landed, the new CEO had just fired her. So I was walking into a sticky situation. And I get on the elevator and I look up at this tall, lanky guy and I'm like, "Are you here for the Panalpina meeting?" And he's, "Yeah, you could say that. I'm the new CEO, David Beetson." I said, "Oh, great to meet you, David." He goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm John Delgado. I'm a recruiter. I do some work for Panalpina." And he's, "I don't work with recruiters. I have my own network. Good luck to you." He broke my heart. And the elevator opens. It gets even more awkward. I walk to my hotel room and I'm putting the key in the door and I look to the right and David's literally, his room's right beside me and he's putting his key in his door. So I mingled. I end up flying home the next day. And like a week and a half later, I call him at his office in San Francisco and his assistant answers the phone. And I was like, is Dave in? And she goes, oh, no, your dad's at North Star at Lake Tahoe. She thought I was his son. And I said, do me a favor, can I get dad's number out there? And she gave it to me. So I call him up and I'm like, he answers the phone in the same way he always have, Dave Beatson. And I said, hey, Dave, this is John Delgado, that recruiter you met down in Miami. And he goes, Jesus Christ. I'm like, David, hold on. I said, if I can track you to North Star, imagine the candidates I can bring you. And he starts laughing. And he says, I'll tell you what, you get a shot. Meet me down in Miami next Thursday. Be there at noon. This is where the story gets super interesting. His number 2 guy was there, who was the head of sales, the chief revenue officer, a guy named Kerry Dittman. I ended up placing, 70, 80 people for them over the next 2 years in the United States. Kerry ends up leaving after David left Panalpina. Kerry ended up changing gears and going into the tech side of the industry, doing supply chain software sales. I called Kerry last October because he and I have maintained a friendship. And Kerry ended up coming over to FreightPath, and now he's our CRO.
Wow.
So the guy I was in an office with is some young 20-year-old just getting into business, and I'm looking up to him and working with him, placing people, is now the CRO for FreightPath. It's interesting, life's little turns.
John, that's what you need to incorporate in your training. I'm not so sure what you did there can be trained, but it's what we need. It's the stuff that you don't learn in books sometimes. So I want to take a quick time out to invite you to the Trimble Insight Conference, which will be held in Las Vegas on September 15th, 16th, and 17th. I will definitely be there, and you should too. Trimble Transportation is a leading provider of transportation management solutions, offering technology and services to help businesses optimize their fleet operations and improve efficiency. If you're looking for the transportation conference of the year, look no further than Trimble Insight 2024, featuring over 200 educational breakout sessions, networking opportunities, and engaging evening events. I recently interviewed Kelly Williams from Trimble, and I will put a link to that episode along with a link to the conference registration in the show notes. I will see you in Las Vegas. So getting back to it, John, how did you start FreightPath? So you're working in MRI. What was next after that?
After MRI, I started my own firm called Search Logistics and just kept doing the same thing, but working even harder and growing my network globally. So placing people all over Asia, Europe, here in the US, LATAM, of course. And about three and a half years ago, I get a call from a good friend of mine named Jürgen Genske, who's at Kuehne+Nagel. And Jürgen says, hey, John, if you want to revolutionize this industry and build a powerful company, you need to get into training because we are having a really rough time. The whole industry is. Talent is scarce. So I listened to him because he's a trusted industry icon. And I started doing research. And for every open sales job, I was noticing that there'd be 10 to 15 open operations roles that would go unfilled for long periods of time. And the more research I did, the more I came to the conclusion that a lack of training is the reason these positions were being open for so long. And the tie to that is this: the industry was doing a terrible job of growing the next generation of talent. They were so busy putting out fires that they weren't being progressive enough, I guess you'd say, in growing that next gen. And it's a tall order. It's a tall order.
I was going to say, I know we're graduating supply chain people now, supply chain degrees. And I don't know what that program entails, but it's still a relatively new program, last 20 years or so. In the past, prior to that supply chain degree, I'll speak of Michigan State, they had a program that was all about purchasing and logistics. I think it was and then they had a separate packaging program, all great. A lot of people I know went through it. But now we have the supply chain degree, But not everybody has a supply chain degree. The majority of the people working in this space don't have any of that. It's almost a joke. People say, yes, I got a degree in humanities, or I got a degree in English, or I got a degree in biology. That's why I'm a logistics guy. So we have people, great people in this space, who don't always get the actual education. I say this on my podcast. I always ask people to break down and tell us what their business is in very basic terms, because people listen to podcasts like mine to figure out what's going on. This is a huge space it's almost a catch-all business. The transportation guys don't fully understand the warehousing business. The freight forwarders don't fully understand the technology. The technology guys
And
don't
it's so
understand.
interconnected. It's so
Yeah.
interconnected.
And nobody seems to know it all. And that's what our customers expect. When I give you some freight, I hope you understand to some extent that freight came from China and it was manufactured there and that it came on a boat. And there's an expectation by the shipper that you actually are a pro. And what we mostly are guys who are an inch deep and a mile wide.
I think there's a problem if the majority of supply chain majors coming out of school can't tell you what a TEU is, then I think there's something missing. The other thing too I'm seeing is that people in supply chain, the graduates, their focus in the program typically is procurement, analysis, the planning side, but they're really not getting the nuts and bolts piece of it. Even if they were understanding how the operations roles worked and what those people do, I think it would benefit them, let alone learning how to maybe move some freight and what that interactivity with the carriers looks like. But that's not how it's done today, and we're trying to change that.
Yeah, and so you had a recruiting business, and you changed that. So talk about that transition.
Yeah, I first of all checked in with my wife and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to make a pretty big pivot here and get into the training side." What's amazing is she's an educator as well, so the light immediately went on for her, and she's, "I think this is fantastic. Let's do it." So FreightPath was born, and I mapped out early on what a 1-year apprenticeship program would look like, because I knew I could go out and get the people, but then what? So the goal was to give them a 360-degree view of the logistics world. So everything from Incoterms, global logistics geography, air freight, sea freight, branch finance accounting. They're seeing how the whole engine works. So that was the starting point. And then from there, building all the nuts and bolts courses having to do with the stuff that's really not that sexy, like compliance and customs brokerage, hazardous and dangerous goods, hazardous materials, et cetera.
The companies you're working with, are they saying, "Hey, John, we'd like you to train our people," or is it you're training people to go plug them in? I'm trying to understand the difference between those.
It's actually both. So we create learning paths for both sides of the house. So the apprenticeship program is the company saying, "Hey, we'd like to start a class of 10 people." We bring them the 10, they screen them, they go through the normal hiring process, then they start. They work 30 hours a week for 1 year in the branch as an employee, and then they do 10 hours of coursework per week. So that's one of our programs or products, if you will. And then the rest are geared towards upskilling people wherever they happen to be. So we do a brief intake analysis of their knowledge, and then we create a learning path for them. And one of the mantras of the company is we create lifelong learners, because so much changes in this business that if you're really going to stay on the cutting edge, you've got to be constantly upskilling.
Yeah, that's very interesting and very needed. I can say this. I got a master's degree in education geared towards adult instruction and performance technology, which is basically educating adults. And I know it's a little different when you're educating adults, because all you're doing is training the gap. Like when you have a kindergartner, you say, we're teaching them all the ABCs. We're going to teach them to count to 20. With adults, you're only trying to train them on the stuff they don't already know. So it's hard to drag them through and say, "Hey, we're going to teach you accounting." You're like, "Oh, come on. I've been doing accounting for 20 years. I don't want to learn how to do accounting. Teach me how to do this, whatever specialized accounting that we're doing." I only want to know what is, I call it just-in-time learning. I only want to know what I need to do, what I need to know to do my job today.
Well, it's so funny you say that because we're able to very tactically deploy our coursework. We have a specialty software system that has allowed us to upload all of our courses into it. And it uses some AI technology to auto index. So it basically turns all of your learning into a referenceable encyclopedia. The reason that's relevant here is our clients can specifically tell us what topics. We can click on those topics. All the testing and all the data in the back end is instantly created, and we can point and click, and create new courses very quickly.
So talk about the AI element in all this, because I know you guys are using it for this education. And so this is very different because it becomes very customized and individualized for the person rather than just, hey, we're teaching you all this. And I might learn that fast and not want to, and then be bored for the rest of the class. That's not the way AI works.
We use a little bit of AI right now with regard to course development, but most of our course development is done with subject matter experts, and the AI just augments that. Where AI is really going to come into play for us, it's in the future, actually. We're building our AI brain right now and tweaking it. And what we're able to do in the future, we're hoping in the next 24 months or less, the entire education landscape, not just for us, but for the whole world, is about to change. And the way that's going to happen is, in our case, we upload all of our courses into the AI brain. It essentially learns everything we're uploading. It's not just memorizing it or holding it in storage. It's literally learning it along with all the case studies. But it's learning it with an end goal to teach it back. So it's able to look at you, Joe, and say, after a brief intake, it's going to look at you and go, okay, Joe, I understand your learning patterns. I understand how you assimilate information. So I know how to deliver it to you. But more than that, it's going to create an experience like you and I talking here on your podcast. It's, good morning, Joe. How was your night? Fantastic. Okay, this is where we're going to pick up. We left off yesterday. We were talking about customs compliance in relation to lithium batteries and how they're stored and transported. Okay, we're going to pick up there, and blah, 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 blah.
That's fantastic. And I think the idea of the individualized learning is very exciting because we all know people we went to high school with who got turned off. Maybe they weren't good students and they ended up taking shop classes, and then they never went on to college. Maybe they did something technical, but somewhere along the line, their desire to learn was turned off. And it was like, this is a bummer. And and you would even hear people say, I'm not smart. I'm not an education guy. And I don't think any human is built that way. I think it happens. And by nobody's trying to make you turned off. But if we can get something that is interactive, that constantly is molding itself around my experience and saying, here's the best way to keep this guy interested. That's fantastic. And again, it's almost impossible for a teacher. They got 30 kids in the class to have every last one to be completely inspired. Even good students are sitting in class saying, this sucks. I hate this. I can't wait to get out of here.
But at the very least, it's not personalized. You're just one of 30 versus in an AI experience, you're one of one.
Yeah. And in a regular classroom, there's going to be people who go, this is all review for me. I already know this. This sucks. And they're doodling. I guess in today's world, they'd be playing with their phone, but they're doing something other than learning. And for the slowest learner in the class, they are unable to keep up. But both of them have to be educated. And so we have to figure out a way. And I think AI and what you're talking about is the way we get there.
This is really next level, next gen kind of stuff. But AI can't be fooled very easily either. So if you're nodding along, the AI is going to pick up on what's your eye movement, what's your facial expression. And if it's just communicated a topic and it's sensing that you're not getting it, it's going to pause and it's going to rehash it for you. It might even deliver it in a different way, hoping for a better outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was still taking courses in education, we'd say some people learn by reading. Some people learn by group interaction, right? Some people are learning through repetition. There's all these different approaches to learning. And if that AI can pick up the individualized piece of that and say, okay, we're gonna mold this around you. This is completely customized. And what I also love about it is our business is complex and complicated, and there are certain customers that have very different needs than the next customer, and we have to learn them all. And so if you say, hey, we have a big customer, it's an automotive company, we're doing a ton of business with them, and they have extra requirements, okay, we can do that training.
Here's where it gets really cool. So let's say the AI bot, let's say her name is Shelly. And let's say you get through our program and we've used AI, you've done one-on-one learning. Shelly stays with you for life. You can have your phone out, and when you're actually in the job and you reach a point where there's a question and you're not exactly sure, you can go, hey, Shelly, these lithium batteries, is the paperwork done, or do I need to give it to someone else first? And Shelly will pipe right up. Nope, you're doing great. It needs to go to so and so. That's the future.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember this launching a new car. It was a Jeep in Thailand. This is a long time ago. And I remember some of the parts had to be made in Thailand, the local content. And then the rest of the car had to be shipped in pieces and parts and crates to be assembled in Thailand because they wanted the local content assembly over there. And I remember early on somebody said, Joe, they're not going to be able to localize the airbag and then the explosive that comes in it. And I was like, yep, I agree. And they say, and you might struggle to get explosives into Thailand. And I was like, we're not the only people shipping cars there. And they said, you're the only American maker that is going to be the first American car built in Thailand. And I was like, okay, well, as long as our logistics guys know that and that they're shipping explosives into Thailand, shouldn't be a problem. It was a huge problem. And I remember thinking, that's something that prevents a car launch. And for anyone in automotive knows that they execute people for missing car launches. Maybe not execution, but close. and But I keep thinking there's all sorts of those situations in the forwarding business. There's food and pharma and all sorts of stuff that can go to one country but not to the next.
I think even outsourced military
Oh
weapons,
my God, yes.
ammunition.
Yeah, and right now the expectations are higher than ever that you will not do business with certain countries, you will not ship certain things to certain countries, you will not sell to certain countries, certain regions of certain countries. And that keeping track of all that is very difficult, but communicating it to people is very difficult. And if you can have your AI absorbing that and updating on a regular basis, that's a very powerful tool. And
Game changer.
and if I constantly interacting with it and say, hey, can I send those lithium batteries this way? No. Can I do it this way? Yes.
And getting that answer back in seconds and not worrying about an email response 10 minutes or 20 minutes later, yeah, it makes us better. It's going to change everything.
This is just-in-time training. I don't want to be trained for a situation that might come in 6 months. I want to be trained on something right now for the problem I'm experiencing today. And that's getting back to the skills gap. So companies call you up and say, hey, we need to figure out how to fill all these ops roles. Explain how that works with you guys right now.
Sure. Number one, we look at what the positions are, where they are, and just put together a recruitment plan. Now, one thing about our company is we have a standalone product where they can just get the recruiting piece of it. Some of the larger companies have their own L&D programs,
That way, that's
learning and development, and they're very guarded about keeping those in place. So we do have a program called Pathfinder Select, which is we just bring the candidates to the table and get them hired. If it's a project where it's multiple people and they want training, There's so many different ways we can deliver it. We can deliver it in the apprenticeship format, where we're hiring people with no experience and we train them from the ground up, or we bring people from competitors and then we can custom deploy training, whatever you can imagine, wherever they are.
So when you say apprenticeship program, it's funny because my father went through an apprenticeship program, and I told you this before we hit record. He did it through Ford Motor Company back in the day, and it was an engineering apprenticeship program. And I remember years later, my dad had an engineering business, and I remember he would say to Ford people, "Yeah, don't worry, this guy went through the program, the apprenticeship program." And they go, "Oh, okay, good." That was for a while a very valuable thing to say he went through the program, meaning he gets how we work at Ford Motor Company. And then we got away from that. We said we don't need apprenticeships in engineering. We're going to go get our engineers from the universities, which I'm not against the universities, but it's not an applied education. It's a basic education. And it doesn't teach you how to do engineering or logistics at Ford Motor Company or General Motors. It teaches you the broad strokes of it, which is not enough if you're trying to run an organization. Somewhere along the line, they have to be educated on how it gets done. And it shouldn't just be tribal knowledge.
That's 100% right. That is 100% right. What's so interesting is the greatest titans, at least that I've seen on the freight forwarding side, are all from mainly European companies in the US that went through these really rigorous 3, 4, 5-year apprenticeship programs. And these are the guys that have carried the torch. But they're seeing now that the US market is in, dire straits and needs to pivot and come up with their own. And that's what we've done. We've got an Americanized version for the market.
Yeah, and the advantage of the apprenticeship program is you're doing the job during the day or part of the day, and then you're doing the education. So everything you're learning, you're using. And it's not pie in the sky. It's not going to be theoretical. You'll get the theoretical stuff you need, but it's the nature of it is.
You bring up a great point. So in our program, part of the agreement from the beginning is that the client has to put the student or the apprentice, we call them pathfinders, the pathfinder has to be in whatever department they're learning about. So if they're going through an air freight course, they're in the air freight department that month. If they're learning sales and marketing, they're with the sales team. If they're doing domestic transport, they're with the domestic team. So they're circulating through the branch. So they're not just learning about an airway bill, they're cutting an airway bill and they're putting it all into practice.
Now, you mentioned the sales. Will you guys eventually use this tool to educate sales guys also?
We're in the process of doing that very thing. We're doing it 2 ways. We have a partnership with a fantastic guy named Martin Poehler at a company called Axiomata. And then we are home growing our own with a fantastic gentleman who's ex-UPS named John Alford. And more to come on that front. We'll say more about that on our next podcast.
I think the nature of the sales thing is you have to learn the sales skills, the knowledge of how to be a good salesperson, but you also have to have the product and industry knowledge. And you have to have it enough that you don't, you have to have enough of it that you don't find yourself lying and stammering like I am doing right now.
Not at all. In my career history, I have found that the best salespeople have all come from operations.
Yeah.
They understand the pain points. They can talk to the customers. They get it.
Yeah, I'm an ops guy at heart. That's where I spent most of my career. And I always think that when you're an ops guy, you feel a little bitter about wading into problems. But I do know a lot of great salespeople. But I know if we could have the ideal for everybody, they would have the industry knowledge, the specific company knowledge, and that's going to give you more confidence in what you're talking about. And I think sometimes that's lacking. And by the way, I'll just throw this out there. I talk a lot about niches here. We have all sorts of on the domestic side. We have retail logistics, which is very different than, say, industrial logistics. The cold chain is different. We're being asked to put our toe in a lot of different places. And doing heavy haul is very different than doing LTL, very different from doing small parcel. We have warehousing. retail, traditional warehousing for retail is very different than small parcel for retail. We have to figure out how to educate ourselves as this industry is moving at breakneck speeds.
Absolutely. And I think the AI is playing a lot into that as well. I'm noticing learning and development departments implementing it quicker via AI. The danger is, and what we're finding too, is you have to have humans go behind it just to check it and make sure that the nuts and bolts piece is still relevant and accurate.
Right. By the way, before we hit record, we were talking about certain companies that we know are doing apprenticeship programs. I know DHL is doing some of that in their medical supply chain business, which is huge. And I think the reason they're doing it is because there is no course that you can take that would give you the knowledge to be successful in their organization.
Yeah, there's plenty that are waking up to that fact. The other thing too is no one company could do what we've done in the amount of time. And I give the analogy, we're like a 1,000,000 square foot depository of information, like warehouse, and we give the companies access to it. So I think the future of FreightPath is we want to house L&D departments for companies. You can still have your people and do your thing, but we house it and we can quickly customize and deploy what you need. And I feel that's the future.
Yes. And we're all very comfortable having technology partners. And increasingly, we're happy and content to have outsourcing partners. If I'm a broker or 3PL, I have carrier partners. I know a lot of companies have recruiting partners. And I think you probably noticed this as much as I did. You see a lot of companies saying, oh, this department is talent and people. And I think sometimes when you hear HR, the first thought when you go HR, oh gosh, administrative, legal, right? And when you think about,
Handcuffs.
yeah, and it's not to say you don't need it, but HR is human resources, and it's used to be called personnel. I think we changed HR to sound somehow better, but human resources isn't necessarily as good as people and talent. And I think in the United States, it's not just the United States, it's virtually everywhere. We didn't have enough kids, and we have to have every last person be as productive as possible. We need people, and we're going to have a shortage. I'm the last of the baby boomers. There were too many baby boomers for the market. They did not want us. They did not need us. And to some extent, didn't treat us like they needed us. But today's employees are in demand, and they have to be treated as such. They have to be trained. They have to be maximized their potential, or they're going to go somewhere that does let them maximize their potential.
No, it's very true. We are starting to see another interesting trend. I can't say who, but there are two very large companies that are starting to divest L&D and work with companies like ours. And I do feel like that is definitely going to be part of the future. The other thing we're seeing is that people who, for a variety of reasons, they didn't put enough in their retirement fund, they're bored, they fear retirement. A lot of people in operations are not retiring and working a lot longer. So that's another interesting trend, and companies are enticing them to stay longer to plug the hole because the gap is so big right now. Pretty interesting trend.
Yeah, we're going to need the baby boomers to stick around because we're going to have a shortage of people. And I'm also of the belief that retirement is somewhat of a antiquated thing. Now, if a few generations ago, my ancestors in coal mines, yeah, there's good reason to retire because you're going to die young. Doing what I do, doing work on a computer and doing it from home isn't exactly taxing like working on an assembly line. And so I think it's going to be more about repotting rather than retiring. And I also think we're going to change the way people work, because you might be able to get that baby boomer to stick around if they can work 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And maybe say, well, we'll work around that. And I think we're going to change that for parents anyway. The idea that we work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year, that came and became standard, but it doesn't have to be the standard.
I actually think that the trend when people work from home, I actually think they work harder and longer. And there's flexibility there. When the bell rings at 5, yeah, they might have taken a 2-hour break between 1 and 3, but now they're gonna work from 7 to 10 PM on something else.
Yeah, I think I worked in offices an hour away from my house many years. And I say in automotive, you go to the beehive in the morning, and we don't have to do that anymore. And it's funny, most mornings I wake up, I go for a walk, I do some interviews, I talk on the phone, I send some emails, I go to the gym, I go grocery shopping, I do all sorts of things that I could never do. Every once in a while, I'll be wandering around during the day and going, wow, look what I'm doing. It's like I'm playing hooky, walking around in shorts and t-shirts during the day. It feels wrong.
Hey, don't even get me started on neckties. I haven't put a tie on, and I couldn't tell you how long.
I put a tie on for a wedding a few years ago, and I was like, oh, I'm the only dude here wearing a tie other than the people in the wedding. Like, what am I doing? But anyway, I'm going to try and wrap this bad boy up, and then I get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend John Delgado. We're talking about logistics knowledge work in the AI age. Things are rapidly changing, not only with AI, not only with the workers. We have fewer workers, and they all have to be educated in our business, which is nobody's particularly getting that education in college, even the supply chain majors. And the technology and the demand is changing. So you guys have made some big changes at FreightPath, and it's just the beginning of what you guys are doing. And it's really just rethinking how we educate our people. And I think it's also rethinking what outside companies do for us. Traditionally, we've looked to recruiters just to get me heads. And you say, get me 20 heads, and I know 10 of them are not going to work out, and that's fine. They just got to bang the phones or do whatever I'm asking them to do. We don't look at it that way anymore. We're looking and saying we have to have people and talent that love working at our company. That means we're also going to need them to be productive. They need to be educated. There is a skill gap that's still there. I think we didn't get into it too much here, but I think we're going to also rethink what we're doing at universities, because the idea that you got $100,000 degree and you come out and then you have to be trained by John Delgado is a weird concept.
It's redundant.
Yeah. And I'm not against the universities. I just think they're going to change the way they do business. And they're going to have to change college football with the NIL, but that's another day. So anyway, John, put a big old bow on this one. Wrap it up for me.
I would say that everyone needs to buckle up because, to your point, everything is about to change in a big way. 4-year college degrees are going to be reshuffled. I think in 10 years or less, what we look at as a bachelor's degree is no longer going to exist. I think there's going to be an entirely new platform of degree that isn't even named yet. I've heard rumors and this and that, but for us, we are the locomotive, I think, in the freight world, leading the train on AI technology and learning and development. And I would wrap it up by saying, get on board. This is the time. And we're super excited about the future and want to work with true partner companies that share the same vision we do in bringing the next generation to the market.
I love it. I love it. John, what conferences will we see in you and the team from FreightPath at?
Sure. The biggest one coming up is in Nashville, September 29th through October 2nd. And that's the CSCMP Edge Conference, the Council for Supply Chain Management Professionals. It's a mouthful. And then, of course, next year, early on, Manifest. I think it's in February. And then the big one for us with the forwarders, TPM in Long Beach.
Excellent. Excellent. John, I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, and any other links you and your marketing team give me. I'll put those in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you. I love what you're doing. I think I know this is the future. I don't know. I know it's going to change a little bit, but this is the future. What we're doing for education today is not quite making it happen, but it's also wildly expensive and wasteful.
It really is, but the efficiencies that we're about to experience as an industry, and as a world, are going to change the whole landscape, and I'm super excited about it.
John, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's been a pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support is very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.